Picture this: a man works every single day of his life. He's not lazy, he's not foolish. He wakes early, he labors hard, he goes to bed exhausted, and yet, decade after decade, his purse stays just as thin as the day he started. Now picture another man. Same city. Same opportunities. Same starting point, maybe even less. But somehow, this man dies with more gold than he could count in a lifetime, and the strange part is, he wasn't smarter. He wasn't luckier. He simply knew 7 things the other man never learned. This isn't a hypothetical. This is Babylon, 4,000 years ago, the richest city the ancient world had ever seen, a city so wealthy that its granaries overflowed, its markets glittered with gold, and yet, even there, in the wealthiest city on earth, most of its citizens died poor. Not because gold was scarce. Gold was everywhere. They died poor because almost none of them understood how to keep it, grow it, or make it work for them. And here's the part that should unsettle you: nothing has changed. Right now, in the wealthiest era human civilization has ever known, with more information, more opportunity, more tools to build wealth than any generation before us, most people are still living paycheck to paycheck. Still one emergency away from disaster. Still working harder every year and feeling like they're falling further behind. Why? Why does a species capable of building supercomputers still struggle with something as basic as keeping money in its own pocket? The answer isn't found in a modern textbook. It's found in a set of clay tablets, buried in the ruins of an ancient city, containing laws so simple a child could understand them, and so powerful that the people who followed them built fortunes that outlasted empires. This is the story of the richest man in Babylon, and by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why you've been working hard without getting ahead, and exactly what to do about it, starting today. Introduction. The book was written by George S. Clason in the 1920s, originally as a series of pamphlets handed out by banks and insurance companies to teach ordinary people the basics of thrift and financial responsibility. But Clason didn't write a boring finance manual. He did something far more powerful: he told stories. He set his lessons in ancient Babylon, using parables about camel traders, shield makers, and slaves to teach timeless truths about money in a way people would actually remember and feel. That decision is exactly why this book has survived a century, sold millions of copies, and is still recommended today by self-made millionaires, financial advisors, and everyday people who credit it with completely changing the direction of their lives. It doesn't feel like homework. It feels like a story you can't put down, because underneath the ancient setting is a mirror. You will see yourself in these characters. You will recognize your own excuses in their excuses, your own fears in their fears, and, if you let it, you will recognize your own future in their transformation. Clason's core promise is deceptively simple: wealth is not about how much you earn. It's about what you understand, and what you consistently do with what you have. A man on a modest income who understands these laws will always outpace a man on a massive income who doesn't. That's not motivational fluff. That's the entire thesis of this book, proven over and over through the people who followed it. By the end of this video, you won't just know the 7 principles from this book. You'll understand the psychology behind why most people never apply them, and you'll have a clear, specific action you can take today to start becoming the exception. Let's go back to Babylon. Lesson 1: Pay yourself first. Our story begins with 2 old friends, Bansur the chariot builder and Kabi the musician, sitting outside Bansur's workshop, both frustrated for the exact same reason. They work constantly. Their skills are respected throughout the city. And yet neither of them has managed to save a single coin. Every time gold flows into their hands, it flows right back out, for food, for clothing, for small pleasures, for debts. They both know a man named Arkad, once a poor scribe just like them, who is now the richest man in all of Babylon. And they can't understand it. What separates Arkad from them? Did the gods simply favor him? Was he born lucky? Here's what Bansur and Kabi, and honestly, most people today, get wrong. They believe wealth is the result of how much you earn. More income, they assume, automatically means more savings. But Arkad reveals something that quietly destroys that assumption. A man who earns 10 coins and spends 10 coins is no different from a man who earns 100 coins and spends 100 coins. Neither one is building anything. Their lifestyle simply expands to consume whatever comes in. This is the invisible trap almost everyone falls into, and it doesn't discriminate by income level. It happens at every income level, from the poorest laborer to the highest paid executive. Arkad explains that when he was young, a wealthy lender named Algamish taught him the first and most important secret to wealth, one so simple that Arkad himself almost dismissed it: a part of all you earn is yours to keep. Not what's left over after spending. Not whatever happens to survive the month. A portion, set aside first, before a single coin touches your daily needs, your wants, or anyone else's demands on your money. Arkad describes trying this himself and discovering something profound: he barely noticed the missing tenth. His life continued. His needs were still met. But slowly, steadily, that portion he kept for himself began to grow, and more importantly, it began to change how he saw every coin that passed through his hands. He was no longer just a worker exchanging labor for coins that vanished. He was becoming an owner of something that was quietly compounding, day after day, whether he was working or not. Arkad shares that he simply began setting aside 1/10 of everything he earned before spending anything else, treating it as sacred, untouchable, non-negotiable. Within a year, that small habit had produced more saved gold than he'd managed to accumulate in years of undisciplined earning and spending. It wasn't a massive salary that made Arkad rich. It was this single decision, repeated relentlessly, that set every other success in motion. Here's what you do today: before you pay a single bill, before you spend on anything else, set aside 10% of whatever comes into your hands, automatically, immediately, without exception. Not what's left over. First. If 10% feels impossible right now, start with 5. The exact number matters far less than the habit of paying yourself before you pay the world. But here's the uncomfortable truth Arkad reveals next: setting money aside is only step 1. Because if you don't understand why your money disappears in the first place, that 10% will feel like torture, and you'll abandon it within weeks. There's a deeper problem hiding underneath the surface, and the author's next insight is where most people quietly quit before they ever taste real freedom. Lesson 2: Control your expenditures. Word spreads through Babylon that Arkad has agreed to teach a group of struggling citizens his secrets to wealth. Among them is a man who insists his situation is uniquely impossible: he simply doesn't earn enough to save anything. It's a familiar complaint. Maybe you've thought it yourself. I would save if I made more. But Arkad has heard this excuse 1,000 times, and he's about to dismantle it completely. Arkad makes a claim that stuns the group. He says that what people call their necessary expenses will always rise to consume whatever income they have, unless they consciously decide otherwise. It doesn't matter if you earn 1 gold coin a week or 100. Your desires, left unchecked, will always outpace your income, because desires are infinite and income is not. The real enemy isn't a lack of money. It's the unconscious habit of letting your lifestyle expand automatically to match, or exceed, whatever you bring in. Arkad's solution isn't complicated, but it requires honesty most people avoid. Write down exactly what you actually need to live, true necessities, and separate that ruthlessly from things you've simply grown accustomed to wanting. He tells the group that many of the things they call necessary are, in fact, desires they've never questioned. The goal isn't to live in deprivation. The goal is to consciously choose your spending instead of letting habit and impulse choose it for you. Arkad describes budgeting not as a punishment, but as a tool of control, like a farmer building fences around his fields not to restrict himself, but to protect what's growing inside. He explains that once you set your 1/10 aside for savings, you build a plan for the remaining 9/10, allowing yourself to enjoy life while still ensuring every coin has a purpose. Without this plan, he warns, money simply evaporates, not because it was spent on anything meaningful, but because it was spent on nothing you can even remember. Track every coin that leaves your hands for the next 30 days without judgment. Then divide your true necessities from your unconscious desires. Build a simple plan for your spending, not to restrict your joy, but to make sure your money is working for the life you actually want, not the life your habits have accidentally built for you. But even with savings and a disciplined budget, Arkad reveals something that changes everything about what comes next. Gold sitting still, he says, is gold doing nothing. And the next lesson is where ordinary savers become extraordinary wealth builders, because this is where your money stops working for you occasionally, and starts working for you constantly, even while you sleep. Lesson 3, Make your gold multiply. A young man in the group asks Arkad the question that separates those who stay comfortable from those who become truly wealthy. I have managed to save some gold. What now? Do I simply keep it safe? It's a fair question, and one most people never even think to ask, because they assume saving alone is the finish line. Arkad explains that gold hoarded and untouched is gold that has stopped serving its purpose. A pile of saved coins, sitting idle, provides safety, but it doesn't provide growth. Meanwhile, life continues to move forward, prices rise, needs change, years pass. If your saved gold isn't growing alongside your life, you're quietly falling behind even while believing you're getting ahead. This is where Arkad introduces the idea that transformed his entire life. Gold has the capacity to work for its owner, multiplying itself, if it's placed wisely into productive use. He describes his savings not as a static pile, but as a growing army of golden slaves, each coin capable of earning more coin, which in turn earns more, compounding on itself relentlessly, year after year, whether Arkad is working or resting. Arkad tells of lending his early savings to a shield maker, who used the gold to purchase bronze in bulk at a discount, then repaid Arkad with generous interest from the profit. That single transaction taught Arkad the mechanics of compounding. His gold had gone out, done productive work in someone else's hands, and returned larger than it left. He repeated this process again and again, and watched his small savings transform into a force that grew faster than his own labor ever could. Once you've built even a small amount of savings, don't let it sit idle indefinitely. Learn how money can be placed into productive use, whether that's a retirement account, an index fund, a small business investment, or another vehicle appropriate to your circumstances and knowledge. The goal isn't speed. The goal is consistency, letting time and compounding do work that your labor alone never could. But here's where Arkad's story takes a darker turn, because multiplying your gold recklessly, without wisdom, can destroy in a single mistake what took years to build. The author discovered this the hard way, and the lesson that follows might be the most important one in the entire book. Lesson 4, Guard your treasure from loss. Arkad admits something surprising to the group. His very first attempt at investing wasn't a triumph. It was a disaster. Early in his journey, eager to grow his gold quickly, he handed his hard-earned savings to a bricklayer who promised to buy rare jewels from a merchant traveling to a distant land, guaranteeing a fortune in return. Arkad never saw his gold, or the bricklayer, again. Here's the hidden trap Arkad reveals: the same excitement that makes multiplying gold so appealing also makes people reckless with it. The desire to grow wealth quickly clouds judgment, tempting people to hand their savings to strangers, chase promises that sound too good to be true, or invest in things they don't actually understand, all in pursuit of speed. Arkad's insight, hard-won through his own painful loss, is this: the first principle of investing isn't growth, it's protection. Before asking, "How much can this earn me?" the wiser question is always, "How safely will I get this back?" He learned to only place his gold where the principle was secure, guided by those with genuine wisdom and experience in that specific field, never based on charm, urgency, or the promise of extraordinary returns. After his loss, Arkad sought advice not from smooth-talking strangers, but from men who had already proven themselves capable stewards of wealth: a jeweler for questions about jewels, a farmer for questions about land. He realized that the pain of his first loss had actually protected him from far greater losses later, because it forced him to build a discipline of caution that guided every decision that followed. Before investing in anything, ask yourself honestly, do I understand this well enough to judge its safety, or am I trusting someone else's excitement? Seek guidance from those with proven, verifiable experience, not those who simply sound confident. Protect your principal first. Growth means nothing if it isn't built on a foundation that can hold. Now, Arkad has taught the group how to save, how to spend wisely, how to multiply gold, and how to protect it. But there's one decision most people never even consider a financial decision at all, where they choose to live, and Arkad reveals why this single choice quietly shapes a person's entire financial future. Lesson 5: Own where you live. Arkad turns to a quieter, often overlooked issue, the silent drain of paying for shelter you'll never own. He describes families who spend a significant portion of their earnings year after year on rented walls, watching that money disappear permanently into someone else's pocket, building someone else's wealth instead of their own. Most people, Arkad observes, never question this arrangement, because it's simply how things have always been done. But he points out a quiet, compounding cost: money spent on rent produces nothing lasting. It provides shelter for a month and then it's gone, forever, while the landlord's wealth grows steadily from that same payment. Arkad encourages his students to work toward owning their own dwelling, not necessarily grand or immediate, but a place where their money builds something that belongs to them, rather than continuously enriching someone else. Beyond the financial benefit, he notes something deeply human: owning your home also reduces the psychological burden many families carry, replacing the instability of rented life with a sense of security and pride. He describes families who, once free from paying rent indefinitely, redirected that same money into their own savings and multiplying gold, accelerating their wealth far faster than before, not because they suddenly earned more, but because they stopped permanently losing money to a payment that built nothing for their own future. If home ownership is a realistic goal for your circumstances, begin working toward it deliberately. If it isn't yet possible, examine your housing costs honestly and ensure you're not sacrificing your ability to save and invest simply to maintain more space or comfort than you truly need. But Arkad isn't finished. Because even a man who saves, invests wisely, and owns his home can still be blindsided by the years he can no longer work, or by tragedies he never saw coming. The next lesson is about protecting a future you haven't even reached yet. Lesson 6: Ensure a future income. Arkad poses a sobering question to the group: what happens when you're no longer able to work? Illness, old age, misfortune, none of these announce themselves in advance, yet Arkad observes that most people plan as though their earning years will simply last forever. The hidden danger here isn't laziness or foolishness, it's simply the human tendency to avoid thinking about distant, uncomfortable futures. It's far easier to focus on today's needs than to prepare for a version of yourself decades away, a version that feels almost unreal until suddenly it isn't. Arkad's insight is that true wealth isn't just about the gold you accumulate, it's about ensuring that gold, and the income it produces, continues even when your ability to labor eventually ends. He teaches that part of one's financial plan must be dedicated to this future self, building resources specifically set aside for the years when active earning is no longer possible, and preparing for the unexpected losses that life inevitably brings to every family eventually. Arkad describes men in Babylon who pooled resources together in mutual agreements, ensuring that if misfortune struck one family, the group's combined resources would support them, an early form of the very insurance principles that protect families today. Those who prepared this way faced life's uncertainties with steadiness, while those who hadn't were left vulnerable to complete ruin from a single unfortunate event. Take honest stock of how prepared you are for the years when you can no longer actively earn, and for unexpected setbacks that could derail your family's stability. This might mean retirement contributions, insurance, or an emergency fund. The specific vehicle matters less than the discipline of preparing deliberately for a future self who is counting on the decisions you make today. Arkad has now covered 6 powerful laws, but he saves what might be the most personally transformative lesson for last. Because none of the previous 6 matter if you never address the one asset every single wealth-building strategy actually depends on: yourself. Lesson 7: increase your ability to earn. A student in the group admits something many people quietly feel but rarely say out loud: even after saving, budgeting, and learning to invest, his income still feels frustratingly limited. There's only so much a fixed skill set, in a fixed role, can produce, no matter how disciplined he becomes with what little comes in. Arkad identifies something crucial here: all the discipline in the world can only work with the raw material you give it. If your ability to earn stays stagnant, your wealth-building efforts are working with a ceiling that never rises. Many people focus entirely on managing what they already earn, while completely neglecting the deeper work of becoming someone capable of earning more. Arkad's insight is refreshingly direct: your income is a direct reflection of your skill, your value to others, and your willingness to grow. He urges his students to continuously sharpen their craft, deepen their knowledge, and become genuinely more valuable in whatever work they pursue, because the world consistently rewards those who consistently improve, while it quietly forgets those who stay the same. Arkad reflects on his own transformation, from a simple scribe copying laws onto clay tablets, to a man who studied lending, studied trade, and continuously expanded his understanding of how wealth actually functions. His growing knowledge became just as valuable as his growing gold, because it was his knowledge that had made the gold possible in the first place. Invest deliberately in your own skill and value, through learning, through mastering your craft, through seeking out knowledge that makes you genuinely more capable in whatever field you've chosen. Treat your own growth as seriously as you treat your savings, because ultimately, they fuel each other. You now have all 7 of Arkad's laws. But the author saves one final story for the end of the book, a story so raw and human that it might be the most powerful one of all, because it isn't about a man who was already wealthy learning to grow richer. It's about a man buried in debt, shame, and despair, learning to become free again. The story of Dabasir, from slave to free man. Dabasir wasn't always in chains. He was once a respected saddle maker in Babylon, earning a solid living, until he began spending beyond his means, borrowing from friends to fund a lifestyle he couldn't actually afford, chasing comfort he hadn't yet earned. When his debts became unmanageable and his creditors began demanding repayment, Dabasir did what many people, even today, are tempted to do when overwhelmed: he ran. He fled the city entirely, leaving his debts, his reputation, and his shame behind him, or so he believed. His escape led him into a life far worse than the one he'd fled. Captured and enslaved, Dabasir found himself trading camels in a foreign land, treated as property, stripped of freedom, dignity, and hope. It was in this lowest moment, physically enslaved, emotionally broken, that Dabasir had the realization that would eventually save him. His external chains were a direct reflection of the internal chains he'd built through years of avoiding responsibility, chasing comfort, and refusing to face his debts honestly. He resolved, from that place of complete rock bottom, that he would find a way to repay every single person he owed, no matter how long it took, no matter how difficult the path. He began by simply doing his current work with excellence, earning small amounts of trust and eventually small amounts of gold. From his meager earnings, the earnings of a slave, Dabasir began setting aside a portion for himself, a portion for his creditors, and living carefully on the remainder, applying the very laws that Arkad had once taught, even from within captivity. Slowly, methodically, Dabasir's diligence earned him increasing responsibility, then eventually his freedom, and finally, gradually, the ability to return to Babylon and repay every debt he had once run from. The chains that had once been physical had actually always been a mirror of the chains he'd placed on himself through avoidance, and it was only by facing his responsibilities directly, one deliberate action at a time, that Dabasir became genuinely free, in every sense of the word. His story is the emotional heart of this book, because it proves something essential: it doesn't matter how far you've fallen, how deep your debts, or how heavy your shame. The same 7 laws that build fortunes can also rebuild a broken life, one honest decision at a time. Let's conclude it. Here's what Bansir and Kabi eventually understood, sitting outside that workshop, and what Dabasir understood from the depths of slavery, and what generations of readers have understood since: Arkad wasn't luckier than them. He wasn't born into privilege. He simply understood 7 laws that anyone, at any income, in any circumstance, can apply starting immediately. Pay yourself first. Control what you spend. Make your gold multiply. Guard it fiercely from loss. Own where you live. Prepare for the future self who's counting on you. And relentlessly increase your own ability to earn. None of these require a fortune to begin. None of them require permission, luck, or a perfect starting point. They require only a decision, the same decision Arkad made as a young scribe, and the same decision Dabasir made as a broken slave in a foreign land. So here is your challenge, starting today, before this video ends and life pulls your attention elsewhere. Choose one law. Just one. If you've never paid yourself first, set that 10% aside from your very next payment, before anything else touches it. If you've never tracked your spending, start today, honestly, without judgment. Small, consistent action is exactly how a scribe became the richest man in Babylon, and exactly how a broken slave became a free man again. If this story moved you, if you felt yourself in Bansir's frustration, or Kabi's excuses, or Dabasir's shame and eventual redemption, don't just watch and forget. Subscribe, because this channel exists to bring you these transformations, one timeless story at a time. And share this with someone in your life who's still waiting for a bigger income to finally start building the life they actually want. Because here's the truth Babylon left behind in its ruins, written not in gold, but in clay tablets that have outlasted every fortune ever built. Wealth was never about how much you earn. It was always about what you understood, and what you were willing to do with what you had, starting exactly where you stand right now. The gold is still there, waiting. The only question left is whether you'll finally reach for it.